pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yes, we have an appointment letter from the Board of Town Council designating Don Kraft, who I'm told is unable to be here this morning, but as their representative to your seat, it is in proper form, and he is the representative from both.
Excellent. Welcome, Mr. Kraft, to the commission. Moving on to roll call. Call the roll.
Yes. Kyle Allen, Dwayne Arndt, Jeanette Bass. Here. Janet Beck. Here. Jeff Benson.
Here.
Jim Biggs.
Here.
Kevin Brightsky.
Here.
Charlie Brown. Robert Carnahan.
Here.
Bill Carroll. Anthony Copeland. Don Kraft. Jocelyn Denham. Thank you. Tom Burgundy.
Present.
John Derwinski. Dinah Dubras. Present. Denise Ebert. Present. Bill Emerson.
Here.
Robert Forster.
Here.
Richard Hardaway.
Here.
Tony Hendricks. Jack Gerald.
Here.
Mike Jessen. Justin Keel.
Present.
Scott Keenan. Andrew Kiris.
Here.
Robert LeMay. Sue Lynch. Here. Sheila Matias. Tom McDermott. Lori Mercer. Wendy Miss. Present. Mike Molenauer. Edward Morales. Matt Murphy. Dwayne Perry.
Present.
David Keeler. Jim Pressel. Jerome Prince.
Present.
Rick Rifa. Tom Schmidt.
Here.
Angie Scott. Brian Snedeker. Steve Stebar. Gerald Sweats.
Present.
Sharon Zuido. Here. Mary Tanis. Jim Tunn.
Present.
George Koppel.
Present.
John Yelkich.
Here.
One moment. They're 26. We're one short of a full commission.
However, we do have a quorum for the executive board, so votes today, until we get that extra one person, will be taken by the executive board. Moving on to public comments, we have one person who signed up, Jeff Hewitt. Mr. Hewitt, you have the floor.
Hello, my name's Jeff Hewitt. I'm with the town of Sherrville on a limited basis. I have been a committee member here for the surface transportation for many years. You're going to be asked today to vote on a green infrastructure initiative that we included in all of our projects. What I do want you to know is that when we first started talking about this, we talked about some cost circuit breakers that would be put into the system that we use. Every one of these ideas are wonderful. They're great for the environmental aspects of our projects, but they don't come without a cost. Many of them will require additional right-of-way to be purchased with our projects. These right-of-way costs can be huge. Some of these infrastructure systems could double the amount of right-of-way we need. I just want you all to be aware, while I am in support of doing everything we can to protect the environment, I want you to be aware that this vote you're taking will have a significant cost on our future projects and the amount of projects that we are able to fund. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Seeing as there's no other public comments signed up at this time, we'll move on to the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve those minutes? Motion by Mr. Khan, is there a second? Second by Ms. Lynch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, the motion is carried. Report of the chair. I don't have any report. Moving on to the report of the executive director, Mr. Warner.
Great. I just have two things to cover today. First of all, as you're aware, there have been a ton of federal programs coming out under the IIJA, Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. What we thought we'd do this morning, just briefly, is to spotlight 3 of those programs that have come out, and just for some quick background, there's 2 components to that bill. There's the formula element of it, which we automatically receive certain funds under certain programs, like we always have. That number is going to increase, like we talked about in past meetings. But now the discretionary programs are coming out, which are the things that you have to apply for, they're competitive, all of that. And so it's good to be aware of what's out there, and we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of what was coming out. And so 3 in particular that I wanted to spotlight here as we're passing this around. And you can read this for yourself. I won't spend a lot of time here this morning. And 3, the Reconnecting Communities pilot program, Safe Streets and Roads for All, the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant program. The Reconnecting Communities pilot program was and is intended to address the infrastructure investments that were made where instead of rather than connecting communities, they literally separated communities and came through areas of this country where that a major roadway came through and cut off neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So this program is designed to try to repair some of that damage. So there's planning studies that are eligible for these funds to help change that, and some of the initial activities to help reverse some of the negative effects that came from those infrastructure investments. So it's a real interesting focus from USDOT to try to basically undo what they did some time ago. And so it's a whole new thing that's not been in previous bills. So it's worth taking a look at to see if there's elements in the community that could take advantage of these funds. The next one I wanted to highlight is the Safe Streets and Roads for All. I want to say Safe Routes to Schools, but it's kind of similar in that respect. This is for basically safety plans and comprehensive safety planning and activities to help address safety plans in your communities to try to reduce the incidence of injuries and fatalities, particularly around bikes and pedestrians, etc. And I should back up and say some of the deadlines, because that's important to pay attention to. They're in the handout, but for the Reconnecting Communities pilot program that I spoke about first, that deadline is October 13th. For the Safe Streets and Roads for All, that deadline is September 15th. So sooner will be coming up quickly. But there's $1 billion available in that fund. And I should have said for the Reconnecting Communities, there's $50 million for planning and $145 million for construction. So again, then on to the third program I wanted to highlight is the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant program. This should be near and dear to a lot of the folks here on the commission. We passed a resolution in supporting some legislation, state legislation, to try to address the incidents of blocked railroad crossings. We had a whole railroad crossing task force that met for at least 4 times, if not more. And it was very well attended from folks from all different sectors, not just governments, and everybody from police chiefs, fire chiefs, to just talk about the difficulties since the Supreme Court struck down the ability to ticket trains that are blocking intersections for more than 10 minutes. We have gotten data that show that some of those train blockings have now had an hour that have happened across Northwest Indiana. Of course, that creates all sorts of safety ramifications and being able to get to school. And in that task force, we heard all sorts of horror stories of things like parents helping their kids over the railroad couplings so they can get to the other side of the tracks, which is kind of crazy. So this is very welcome in this program since we have made a big effort to try to solve this problem in Northwest Indiana, and there just hasn't been funding available to do that. And now there's an actual specific grant funding program to try to create the opportunity these are great separations. They're extremely expensive, so who knows how far this will go nationwide. That's $573 million nationwide for that program. Application deadline for that is October 4th. Now, with each one of these three, we put the eligible applicants. NPOs fall in all of these, as well as local governments and all. Just want to offer our assistance, help. If you see anything that could benefit from these programs, we can help you put together your application or help build a coalition where that's appropriate to try to apply for funding for these programs. We are here to try to help and assist to try to bring some of these dollars into discretionary and competitive. So whatever we can do to try to bring funds under these programs, we're happy to try to assist you. Thomas Dow will put this together. It's in the back, our Director of Transportation. Reach out to him or me, and we will do what we can to try to guide, assist, help, give data, whatever we do to try to be successful with these programs. There's a lot more programs than this. I just wanted to highlight these three as being particular relevant. So if there's any questions about these, I'd be glad to answer what I can. But otherwise, just consider this information that you have, and you can take back to your communities and see if there's anything that would benefit your communities under these federal programs. These are not automatic funds to nursing. These are competitive grant applications.
I would just comment that Mayor McDermott was active in trying to get the railroad crossing where the train would go through him, but we haven't seen him in a long while.
Yeah, he instigated that multiple times.
Something that stands out to me is that who will applicants be applying to? NDOT or DOT?
It's a federal program, so it's DOT, in the case of the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant Program, I believe that's the Federal Railroad Administration, and the other two are US DOT. Federal highway.
Are there any other questions on this topic? Was there any aspect at all in this relating to black zones?
I don't recall seeing, and I haven't read verbatim the entire notice of funding of it, the opportunity for the railroad crossings programs. I don't know if that gets into quiet zones at all. It's really about addressing the safety aspects of those.
I know this is a summary, and maybe somewhere hidden in that. Yeah. It may not be blatantly obvious, but it may be an antithesis if we talk about closing crossings, we talk about fault crossings. I could see that it might not be included, but I was forced to ask when I heard you demanding.
Sure. Yeah, we can certainly look in and see if there's anything related to that. Thomas, I don't know if you happen to have seen anything related to that.
I don't recall seeing a mention of quiet zones in the railroad crossing program, but we can go back and look for that specifically and follow up with you.
All right, well, again, just feel free to reach out if you seem applicable, if there's anything we can do to help. All three of these, I think, have ramifications for their different aspects of what they're doing. So, glad to get it. The next thing, yeah.
Todd, we might say these programs are going to be annual programs too, so if we don't submit this year by these deadlines, we can always submit in each of the next 4 years as well. So that's something to keep in mind too. So, or if we submit a planning grant application this year, next year or the year after, we might submit an application for the construction funding to implement that plan. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Thank you, Thomas. If there's nothing else on those federal programs, something that we haven't done for a while, I don't know that we've done since we've been back in person, but we like to recognize key milestones for staff that have been here for certain intervals. And I think you all know the recipient of the staff award today for service is Kathy Miller, our Director of Environmental Programs. Kathy's been with NERC 15 years. We'll come to you. Well, there. Yeah. Sorry. But Kathy, as you know, because of her longevity and her familiarity with federal programs and grants and all of that, has been really invaluable to NERC. She's, I think she also exemplifies, as you've all probably been the recipients of at one point or another, her willingness to help and assist and try to connect dots for people on how to take advantage of a lot of the programs. Not always just environmentally related, but other things as well. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for 15 years. Great. What a
this morning. We reviewed the financial reports for December 2021, May and June of 2022. We also reviewed the bank reconciliations and claim registers for May and June of 2022. There are 3 action items for consideration. We'll begin with procurement number 21-05.04, Talea.
Good morning, everyone. This recommendation is for the procurement, to purchase 26 mobile trail cameras at $87,685 and 3 fixed trail cameras at $10,117.50. We had expiring planning funds that needed to be obligated, so this procurement is coming as an after fact of securing the purchases that we are looking for a recommendation based on that.
And this request comes highly favorable from our commission.
Is there a motion to approve procurement number 21-05.04?
So motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Germany, second by Mr. Hardaway. Is there any further discussion?
In the meeting, the total was $98,000, correct?
$98,500.
What kind of trails are these going on? Bike trails?
Any further questions? If there's no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, the motion is agreed to and adopted.
So we also have SME contract amendment number 1, which also comes highly favorable for approval from our committee. And Kathy Luker will speak up.
Yes, thank you. So we already have an existing contract with SME Inc. to conduct the assessments for our brownfield grant, federal brownfield grant. We have a project in Hammond that is mostly eligible for the federal grant, but there's one parcel that is not. So we are amending SME's contract with the amount needed for assessing the non-eligible parcel and up to an amount to potentially clean it up. And we have an MOU with Hammond to reimburse us for those expenses that are not eligible for the grant. The total amount of the amendment is not to exceed $60,000.
Any questions for Ms. Luker? None. Is there a motion to approve SME contract amendment number 1? So moved. Mr. Emerson, second by Mr. Hardaway. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it. Motion is passed. Moving on to the next.
So we have, finally, while we have Kathy there, the Dry Clean Indiana 2023 contract. Again, this comes highly favorable from our committee.
Yes, this is our annual contract with Dry Clean Indiana, previously South Shore Twin Cities. This contract is a mechanism whereby we pass through congestion mitigation air quality grant funds that are in the TIP assigned to Dry Clean Indiana and ourselves for the purpose of public education regarding air quality. It's through this program that they provide the green fleets services to any of you with fleets of vehicles, and they can give you technical support and training about alternative fuels, vehicles, infrastructure. They can evaluate your fleet and help you be grant ready. All of these services are incorporated into this contract. It is a 80-20 contract, so they must spend a total of $431,860 to be reimbursed $345,488, which is the federal amount of the grant.
Are there any questions? If there are not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Dunn, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lynch. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adopting the Dry Clean Indiana 2022 contract say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the motion is passed. Further, Finance and
That will
Personnel.
be it.
Thank you very much. Moving on to the report of the Technical Planning Committee, Mr. Price.
Mr. Chair, the Technical Planning Committee met on Tuesday, July 12th. And the committee confirmed a presentation on the update of the regional transportation plan, which is being called the NWI 2050 Plus Plan. Staff has been working with 3 consultants on 4 planning sub-areas, which include and a Juneteenth celebration in Maryville. Further outreach will target libraries and bicycle retail locations over the coming months. NERC has created a survey and interactive map for the public to provide their comments and encourages all commissioners to share this link on their municipal websites and social media pages. A brochure about the 2050 Plus plan is available, and a link to the survey map can be accessed by clicking the QR code on the back page. For more information and paper copies of this planning process, please speak with Thomas Dow. There are two actions for consideration today. The first action is on Resolution 2215, the adoption of green infrastructure design guidelines to implement elements of NERC's Living Streets policy. Kathy Luther will explain the action.
So I wanted to start off by responding. Mr. Hewitt had raised his concern at the Technical Policy Committee. And in fact, there is a circuit breaker in the adopted Living Streets policy that was adopted in 2020. That is a policy adopted by this body, and it doesn't go away unless we bring it to you to take it away. So the cost circuit breaker is 15% of the project, and that is an amendment. The Living Streets policy amended the existing Complete Streets policy, which called for all projects to consider within their scope accommodating all users of roadways, pedestrians, and bicyclists, and people with disabilities, and transit. When we amended the Living Streets policy, we added to that universal design and green infrastructure, and then we changed the amount of the circuit breaker, which had been 10% to 15%. So this resolution is primarily to adopt the technical guidelines associated with the green infrastructure piece. So the requirement is to include all of these practices when you scope out your project. Guidelines are to ensure that what the community is scoping out in their project is we're talking the same language, we're meeting the same expectation. And then if the scope looks like it's going to cost too much to the project, then it doesn't apply. So the actual guidelines are primarily going to be part of our website, and they are a lot of tools, definitions, some decision trees, so that you can look and see what are the goals for your community, the water, if you have water quality goals or other goals, or flooding concerns that would be important to you to incorporate into the project. Then this is how you would design it, and then you work with your engineers on the cost of it. So I'm not going to go too much in the weeds, but I did want to respond to Mr. Hewitt's concerns, and so that all of you would be aware that that 15% is the circuit breaker of the application of this policy.
Are there any questions for Kathy? The resolution can be found on page 34 of your packet.
Kathy?
Yes.
Was that 15%, was that raised?
It was 10% for just complete streets. It's 15% for living streets. So that it adds the green infrastructure, the universal design recommendation, and it keeps the previous complete streets guidelines that we had adopted in 2010.
Are there any further questions? Is there a motion to approve resolution 22-15? So moved. Motion by Mr. Henderson. Is there a second? Second. Second by Mr. Thomas. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, and resolution 22-15 is approved.
Thank you, Kathy. The final action is on resolution 2216, amendments 20-22.5 and 20-22.6, fiscal year 2020-2024, and 2022-2026 transportation programs. Charles Bransky will first provide a summary of the 30-day comment period for the amendments, then explain the action. The comment report starts on page 36 of your packet, followed by the resolution, and the technical planning committee
Chairman and members of the commission. Before I begin, I'd like to talk something that's very near and dear to our heart, and I'm not talking about our kids. I'm talking about the tip. As most of you likely have heard, about a month ago, NDOT's 2022 to 2026 STIP had been approved by US DOT. So on June 17th, that's very good news. NDOT and MPOs and just about everyone in the state have been working since December of 2020 on getting that STIP approved. Now, in order for the STIP to be approved, the TIPs need to be approved. However, as they say, the devil's in the details, and no job is complete until the paperwork is done. We have technically not received our approval of the TIP in letter form. So while we can argue and put up a very good argument that our TIP has been approved, until we get that letter, I'm not going on the assumption that it's been approved. So the resolution before you is amending both the 2020 to 2024 TIP and the 2022 to 26 TIP. I have one resolution and 2 amendments before you. Resolution 22-16 is for the amendments 22-22.05 and 20-22.06 on pages 37 to 75 of your packet. The projects listed in these amendments were released for public comment on June 13th and closed on July 5th. As stated in the public comment report on page 36, NERC did not receive any comments to these projects in the proposed amendments. Prior to sending the amendments out for public comment, we did send the amendments to members of the Intergovernmental Agency, Intergovernmental Consultation Group, or ICG, for their comments. NERC did not receive any comments, only one question as to which TIP these amendments apply to, and as I stated earlier, these amendments apply to both 2024 TIP and the 2022-26 TIP. So on pages 39 to 69, amendments 20-22.05 contain projects for fiscal years 22 and 23, and they include Gary, the city of Gary adding design to a safety project, Griffith adding a substantial increase in design for an intersection modification project, Hammond was moving funds for design to right-of-way for their trail project, and NDOT had one bridge replacement, 4 bridge rehabilitation projects, 4 bridge removals, and 1 new bridge project. These are all additional new projects. LaPorte was adding right-of-way and a significant increase in their construction costs. LaPorte County has 2 bridge replacements, and a trail project had a significant increase in right-of-way costs. Lake County had a trail project that had a significant increase in right-of-way costs. Michigan City had a project Elimination. And Porter County had a significant increase in design funding. On pages 70 to 75, Amendment 20-22.06 contains projects for fiscal year 2022, and that is the transit amendment. We keep the transit projects separate from the infrastructure projects because when they leave our sphere of influence, they go in 2 different directions. That's why there's 2 different amendments on this one resolution. Anyway, moving on, there's Nikki added 8 new projects to their TIP, and LaPorte Transport had the purchase of 3 new buses. Are there
note that the special day is Labor Day holiday. This concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Up next, the NERC Economic Development District Report, Ms. Federici.
Good morning. The Economic Recovery and Resilience Plan is in the final stages. We have 2 meetings scheduled in person next week with TIP strategies and various stakeholders. And this will be wrapping up the project sometime later in July, early August. The other item is the Recover Northwest Indiana Loan Program. That program has effectively ended. I think technically the grant expires next week. We were able to successfully make 2 $50,000 loans during the period that the program was available. NERC received their 3rd year of the Partnership Planning Grant through the EDA, and that started July 1st and will continue through June of next year. The notices for EDA grant funding were sent out by the EDA over the last several weeks. So communities that had applied for projects should have been notified. There was an award under the ARPA Economic Adjustment Assistance to the University of St. Francis Crown Point campus. They received $385,129 in order to purchase medical training simulation equipment as part of their program to expand training for a variety of healthcare professions. May I answer any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is the report of the Port District Deputy Commissioner, Mr. Deitch.
Good morning, everybody. Hopefully a lot of you have been keeping tabs on our Flex Road project for 8094. For those who haven't seen, hopefully you've been involved in the comments and public hearings as well. But for those that haven't been aware, we are studying through a health study, planning, environmental linkage study 8094. I don't know if it's a surprise to you, but it's a little busy out there. So we're hoping to increase mobility and safety out there. So that's what this Pell study is aimed at. It's actually the first Pell for INDOT. So we actually have that complete, and it has been published. If you're interested in reading that, it's at indianaflexroad.com. Basically lays out 4 alternatives for ways to increase mobility and safety on 8094. So all the details are on there. Some things that are involved in the discussion are hard shoulder running, ramp metering, variable speed limits, different things like that too. Hopefully multiple options will be available to help increase that mobility in 8094 with the challenges we have out there. So our preferred alternative will now be selected eventually in the near future. So I encourage you to, like I said, indianaflexroad.com to check that out and see kind of our plans for that project. But we're very excited about it, and hopefully something that we can see some more movement out there at 8094 in the near future. Also, community crossings. For those who aren't aware, that's the second call is now live for 2022. That started on July 1st. We actually have extended that deadline to August 31st. I'm sure most of you have had challenges with letting projects, and so those market challenges are part of the reason why we extended that deadline to the 31st. So one thing I do want to stress is if you are looking to submit something for community crossings, make sure you're working with INDOT and our folks that in the LPA process to make sure that we are planning for any challenges we have with those projects. So for instance, we're looking for buffers and project scope and just a lot of wiggle room in case we have some challenges with those markets and the letting. So be in contact with our folks. If you have any questions about that, let me know. We will definitely help out as best as we can to get that awarded for you. We're hoping October is when we'll be awarding those projects as well. The last thing I was going to mention is, if you'll permit me to take a little mini victory lap. For those that haven't heard, CNBC has ranked Indiana's infrastructure #1 for this year. So obviously, a huge part of this is due to 2017, the bill that our lawmakers invested in Indiana infrastructure. This is part of the reason why we're here today. It's our 3rd time since 2016, or 6 years, I believe. 3rd time in 6 years we've been #1, 16, 19, and 2022. So while I'm going to do one of these, it's obviously because of all our partnerships with you folks. So this is something that is benefit to all of your communities. As I always say, our roads may run through your towns, but we know it's your hometown's road. So, you know, when that infrastructure comes through, when we see those barrels, just know that's an investment in the community. But I also know that I'll probably hear some scoffing about us being number one, considering somebody's mad about a pothole from time to time, but that happens. But thank you for all of your participation, making sure this happens. It's something we can be proud of, so thank you for that. That's all I have. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I have one quick comment to that. As a testament to the award, the work that has been done in coordination with the town of Chesterton on 49's safety issues is a prime example of the cooperative spirit that we see from NDOT and their willingness to sit at the table and listen and work out a collaborative solution.
Absolutely.
So we have testimony to that.
Good to hear.
And I'd like to piggyback, you know, the city of LaPorte has had some problems with our roads, faults of our own, and NDOT, and more importantly, the staff. Not that Matt doesn't get all the credit, but the staff sitting out here has been amazing. People are quick to complain to them, but they've been amazing to our team to get us through. So we really appreciate the partnership.
You mentioned that the 8094 Pell has been thinking about the Pell for the US 30 corridor going from State Route 49.
Sure.
What's the status of that, and when will that begin?
I don't believe we have, Jessica, we have secured a consultant for that?
Yep, we have consultants on board. I can give you information on who's on that. We just kind of locked in the full fee because that will start and really drop the ground. So we have everything set up. We're just ready to kind of kick off and get on running.
So still relatively early stages, but
Yeah.
more to come.
Thanks, Rachel. Are there any further questions?
I have one more comment. I'd like to thank NDOT also for meeting with us on some in our Union Township corridor of US 30 with some issues that we've had. And I want to thank you very much for the initial steps on perhaps correcting some things that we need to help with. So thank you very much.
And to be clear, they're thanking me, but really it's our staff that they should be thanking.
It was Adam that actually came to my office and Mike Cool.
And I will stress too that if any folks have any challenges in your communities, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Adam, our communication director. It's our goal to work closely with you if you have challenges, and we'll see what we can do about it. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Moving on to other business. Is there any other business? No other business. We'll move on to announcements. That's you.
All right. I'm proud to announce that we have 19.5 acres on our town grounds, and 1.7 of those acres is going to become our new police and fire station. And that's estimated to cost us about $12 million. We're also going to purchase a new fire engine. We're going to keep our other fire station, and our police department was in our town hall with us, and we're going to expand our town hall. The second thing, I'll add a couple other communities. St. John, Winfield, and Cedar Lake are 3 of the fastest growing communities in the state of Indiana.
Are there any other announcements?
Mr. Chairman, I'm proud and honored to announce that I was appointed to the Indiana Drainage Task Force. Got created by the state legislature. I'm the county surveyor appointment, and so it's going to be kind of a top-to-bottom look at drainage law as it relates to local, federal, state law, and how we can, if we need to make changes and what the change might be. So all my friends at NERC, my door is always open if you have any thoughts on the subject. So please reach out.
Congratulations.
Summerfest in Beverly Shores is Saturday. The parade starts around 4 for your kids.
Either B Square.
Yeah. Yep.
Any other announcements? None. We've reached the end of our agenda. We are adjourned.